Well, hello there everyone, my name is Amy, this is The Opinionated Woman, and welcome to Crafty Reads, the series where I wrap up the last 5 books that I read and we do some kind of crafting. For the last 2 videos and for this video, I have been working on crochet because I'm obsessed. Like, you have no idea. Like, I can't remember what I did with my evenings when I didn't crochet. Like, I don't understand what I did. So I have been working on, I'll put together all of the, oh my god, look how many I've made. I'm so smart. So I'm currently working on a cover for my chair because it's a bit scratchy if I wear crop tops and stuff. So I'm making a cover with these. I love this color scheme so much. So I'm doing a bunch of different colored centers, and then like the flowers in the middle will be slightly different depending on the color scheme. And to cover my chair, I need 4 rounds. So I need 12 of these. No, I need 24 of these. So I've just got to weave in these ends, and then I've got 1 more round to do. And that is what I'm going to be doing with you today. So we've got our beautiful colors. I think I'm going to start with the pink. And let's talk about the last 5 books that I've read. I only have 1 physical book to actually show you today because I went and got a bunch of books from the library. So I've taken them back. So they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I will put the picture up there so that you guys know which book I'm talking about. Oh, actually, there's actually one more thing I wanted to say about these squares. So if you have been doing crochet for a bit and you've like got a handle on like certain types of stitches and you want to learn some new ones, I really recommend doing a starburst granny square. If I remember, I'll put the link to the tutorial that I used down below for this, because this teaches you, it's a double crochet, puff stitch, cluster stitches, and then treble crochet, double crochet, half double crochet. So there's a bunch of different stitches that you get to learn along the way, and like because you do it repetitively, you really get used to like the motion of it, and it's made me a little bit more aware of like what stitches I'm doing and stuff. So yeah, okay, now I promise I'm going to talk about the books. So the first book that I read was Homegoing by Ya Jassy. This is one of my library books. Oh my goodness, this book has got hype for a damn reason. Oh my god. So it's basically a family saga which takes us from the Gold Coast in the slave trade across to the US in the South, and then all the way up to New York, and it follows 7 generations of one family. But the thing that's really interesting, we start the story off with 2 sisters who never knew about each other's existence. They were born in separate villages from the same mother, different fathers, and never knew that the other one existed. So we follow their separate family lines, alternating chapter by chapter. And each chapter will talk about one individual's experience. And it's not very long. It's a 300-page book, and it fits in 14 chapters. And it's so perfectly rendered that you get to know that character. Like, you get to know what they're about, what motivates them in life. You get to know so much about the character in such a small piece of time. And because it's a family saga, we're building on the family history and figuring out what is making this character act like that. It's a lot about generational trauma. But what I thought was really fascinating was, because we start off with these 2 sisters, these 2 sisters are born into completely different circumstances. The one is the daughter of a chief, and she gets married off to a white slave trader. Her sister, on the other hand, gets born into the village where people are commonly taken and sold as slaves, and she is sold into slavery and sent across to America. So the way you'd expect that, because the one daughter like got sold to the slave trader, you'd expect that their quality of life would be better going on like later on, but that's really not the case because of the generational trauma and the the trauma of knowing who your father was, you know, and who your ancestors were, that they were just selling people, you know, like there's a lot to do with that intergenerational trauma. And we end up in America, and the way that it ends and the way that the families end up coming together is so beautiful. It's so beautifully done, and I'm really impressed with Jassie's writing. I really want to pick up Transcendent Kingdom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. Then the next one was The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. This is a book that's been on my TBR for quite a while. I remember it being talked about. I mean, it's like not a new book exactly. But I know Jessie Burton's writing is really wonderful. So I decided, yes, I am going to pick this one up. It's a historical fiction set in the Netherlands, and we're following Nella, who's 18, and she's just been married off to this rich man whose name I can't remember. I'm not going to remember his name. So she goes to live in this fancy ass house in the middle of Amsterdam, and her new husband works for the Dutch East India Company, and she lives in the house with their 2 house staff and her new sister-in-law. And as a wedding gift, her husband gives her this miniature, this like doll's house version of the house that they're living in, like perfectly rendered. And it's kind of creepy. But Nella decides, like, okay, I don't really have much else to do in this house, because like her husband doesn't seem to be really bothered about her. Like, he doesn't want to sleep with her. He doesn't really want to spend too much time with her. He's very much doing business, and she's not really understanding why he married her if he doesn't seem to be interested in her at all, which is something that we will come to later in the story, but I'm not going to tell you now. Like, you need to go read it for yourself. But Nella gets hold of this miniaturist by letter because she wants to start, you know, stocking, furnishing the little house that she's been given. And the miniaturist sends her things that she's asked for, but also sends her things that contain elements that she shouldn't know. Like, the miniaturist shouldn't know some of the details of the things in the house that she's actually making. It is a she. And Nella's trying to figure out who this person is. Like, she keeps going to the miniaturist's house because it's on, it's like a business. And no one comes to the door, and she can't understand, like, what's happening with this. So we have that going on in the background. And then we have some really hectic events that happen throughout her stay in this house. And let me tell you, there are fewer people alive in the house by the end of this. Let's just say that. Jessie Burton writes historical fiction in a way that is so easy to read. It's so easy to read. And all of her characters are so dynamic. And she doesn't shy away from really intense ending, because this ending was really mad. But I really, really enjoyed it. And I will definitely keep on picking up Jessie Burton's writing, because it's so lyrical and so easily digestible. Just, yes, very much enjoyed. The next book I read was Wild as the Witch by Rachel Griffin, and this one didn't hit so well with me. I read Nature of Witches, was it earlier this year or late last year? I can't remember. It's a witchy book. And I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of like nature writing to do with the witches and stuff like that. I've made a center. This is just all double crochet. And so I just went into this book without actually honestly looking at what it was about, because I know I like Rachel Griffin's writing. Griffins? Rachel Griffin's writing. And I decided, like, okay, I'm just going to read this, because also, to be honest, the cover, beautiful. It's here. Oh my God, so stunning. So we're following our main character, Iris, and her mother run this wildlife rescue center, like a rehab center, because their magic is very much to do with nature. And they have like a special connection with animals, which makes them perfect for the job of taking care of them. And I was really excited because, like, one of the main animals in there are wolves, and they very much put an emphasis on the wolves at the beginning of the story. So I thought we were going to get a lot of the story happening in the rehab center. And I was excited for that because I really do love stories to do with animals and magic. And I think the two of them together is like, oh, just like the best thing. But unfortunately, it didn't take place wholly in the rescue. And I think that was a little bit disappointing for me. Essentially, what Iris does is this special tradition that her grandmother taught her, whereas when she's having some kind of frustration, she can make a spell like a curse or something like that, cast it onto a bunch of herbs, and then burn them. And then that'll sort of like be cathartic, you know? So Iris is really mad because she keeps her witchness kind of a secret from people because she does have a bit of trauma in her past to do with an old best friend of hers. So she tries to keep it under wraps for people that don't need to know that she's a witch. And this includes Pike, who works at the rescue. He's studying, you know, in that kind of field, so he works there. And it's very much an enemies to lovers sort of romance in that becomes part of this book. And he says something bad about witches, and she's pissed off. So she goes off and makes a curse. And as she's about to cast it onto these herbs, an owl that had escaped from the rehab flies down and like gets in the way of the curse basically, and the curse attaches to it and it flies away. And now she's panicked because now it's attached to a living thing. If that living thing dies, it will unleash the curse that she put on it, and it can affect not just the person that you cursed in the first place because you have to give it intention. It'll also possibly affect like just like the random public and around them, which is like kind of scary. So under the pretense of needing to get the owl back because the owl's actually injured, her and Pike get their camping gear together and go off to find this owl. And obviously, yeah, enemies to lovers, things happen. At some point he has to find out she's a witch because he has to find out why they're looking for this owl. And I liked the magic parts of it. But what I really didn't enjoy was the whole campaign aspect of things. I like being in nature in stories, but I don't really like camping and hiking, survival in that kind of way. It's just not for me. It's just not my cup of tea. It's nothing against the book itself. I just didn't realize that it was going to be so much of the camping and surviving aspect of things. And also I think there's like a little part of me that's a little bit romantically jaded. So some of the things that happen, I would be like, that's a deal breaker for me. Like if someone did something that heinous to me, I would never give them a chance ever again. And I don't know, because they're young and it's romantic, they let a lot of things slide that I personally wouldn't let slide in a relationship. Let's put it that way. So I'm a little bit jaded in that kind of aspect, but I definitely will read more from Rachel Griffiths because I really like the nature writing, and the next one's not going to be about camping, you know? So I'll just make sure the next time that I double check that it's not about survival and camping before reading it. But if you are into that kind of thing, it's really well written, so you'll probably really like it. Okay, now we can get into the two books that didn't work so well with me. So what I need to learn is that I mustn't read books that Gabby Reads enjoys. I love Gabby Reads. She is such a sweetheart, and she's just like, I love her vlogs, and I love her thriller reading vlogs. I love watching her channel. Like, she's really great. But we don't have the same taste in thrillers, and I need to remember that because I've known this. It's been known, but I just sometimes forget, and I listen to Gabby talking about a book and I'm like, oh, that sounds great, let me read it, and then I fucking hate it. Like this one, I'm so happy for you by Celia Lasky. I heard Gabby talking about this recently and I was like, okay, I'm gonna give it a go, and I shouldn't have because it was dumb. So we're following our main character Robin. She's a lesbian. But that doesn't really have anything to do with the story at all, which I kind of appreciate. She just happens to be a gay protagonist in a thriller, which I liked. And we're in a sort of slightly futuristic world, not in like practical everyday things, but in the fact that the world went through a time where the divorce rate was really high, and then people kind of stopped getting married, and the happiness level of people living, in anywhere across the world was better, but capitalism didn't enjoy that people were not getting married and not spending money on weddings and things like that. So they started to put a lot of laws in place, so that people would be incentivized, like with tax breaks and stuff like that, to get married. So the whole wedding industry started getting this very intense resurgence. And to be honest, some of the intensity about the weddings that I think it's meant to come across as like kind of shocking. I kind of feel that's just how the wedding industry is now anyway. Like, people are fucking insane about weddings and spend ridiculous amounts of money. And there's so many weddings that I see that are just cookie cutter, the same freaking wedding over and over and over again. And yeah, it's just very intense, but it's like intensity 2.0 in this book. To the point where, to avoid divorces, the brides are now trying to resort to charms and like rituals and stuff to try and make it so that these marriages are successful. And a lot of people are finding their partners on this place called Spouse Spotter, or Spouse Finder, or something like that, which is kind of weird. So Robin's friend is told, Robin's friend gets engaged and she is asked to be the maid of honor. She's really like reluctant about it. She's like, doesn't really like the guy, thinks it's a bad match. They definitely disagree on a lot of things, like they have grown apart, but she agrees anyway. And so follows from that point till the actual wedding day, a bunch of really strange events that happen, and it's kind of thrilling in a very mild way. It's thrilling and interesting, and I want to know what's going to happen next. And then it gets to this one certain point in the book where we're at like just before the ceremony is going to start. And if you've read this book, you know exactly what event I'm talking about. And from then on, it was a clown show. Like, it just got more and more ridiculous. Like, it reminded me of those really cheesy American movies that I would sort of like get forced to watch by my boyfriends. They were just like lame and like just like corny. Like, it was just lame and corny. And then the actual end of the book, like the big event, was written so poorly that it didn't have much impact at all. So I was like, what was the point in that? So yeah, that one really bugged me. I really didn't enjoy it. So now I just know that I just watch Gabby's thriller blogs. I'm just going to watch them. I'm not going to read any of the recommendations. Oh my gosh. And the final book is this beautiful cover. Look at it. And that's Animal by Lisa Taddeo. This is the author of Three Women, which I've never managed to get a hold of, but I saw this in a secondhand store and I was like, you know what, let's give it a go. And we start off quite dramatically. Pause for a stitch count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. One more. No. So we're following Joan, and at the beginning of the book, Joan is at dinner with a married man. And she looks up and another man that she's having an affair with, another married man, comes into the restaurant and sits at a table. And he puts a gun to his head and he shoots himself. So we start off with a bang, literal fucking bang, which was pretty intense. And then she decides that she's going to pack up all her stuff and up and drive across the country to California to find this woman. And we don't know why she needs to find this woman. We don't know who this woman is. But we just know that she wants to go and find her and sort of like plant herself in her life, kind of like without her knowing. So it starts off quite dramatically, obviously. And then Joan goes to live in this house where there's like a couple of people living on the property. 2, 3, 4, 5. And she gets this like little local job and she starts to ingratiate herself with this woman, and we still don't know why. And the thing is about this main character is she describes herself as depraved, And I think it's quite a good description. So if you don't like books with an unlikable main character, then this one isn't for you. I do like an unlikable main character. So we get a lot of her day-to-day, like quite strange inner monologue. And then we get her looking at the past, and looking at her affair with the man that she was at dinner with, as well as the affair of the man who shot himself, and the different terrible mistakes that she kept on making, and the way she used to live her life, basically just off the back of these men, not really having emotional connection. Very, very much like trauma responsey. So we also get views into her past, with her and her parents, because we know from the very beginning that she lost her parents when she was 10, and we find out the story of what happened, and it's really intense. So like, trigger warning for parental death, trigger warning for miscarriages, and trigger warning for suicide. Yes. So yeah, there's a lot of triggers in this book. The thing that lost me was, as we got more into this book and we're getting to know our character's backstory a little bit more, something happens in the present. Oh, trigger warning for sexual assault as well. That is very scary and unnerving. And also I don't think is very accurate. So there is a miscarriage of some form. I'm trying not to spoil things, but at the same time give you enough warning, because I found it to be a very, very intense scene, and I've never suffered from a miscarriage or had an abortion. But I think this would be a very triggering scene, and it does kind of come very quickly. So I want you to be warned of that. But yeah, that scene kind of soured the book for me. As well as, ooh, yucky. That's a okay, so that was a tick. If you've never watched yucky, one of my videos before, I do have a tick disorder. So I was just thinking about a scene that I'm not going to tell you about, but it made me react like that. It was really a gross scene, and I really didn't like reading it. I was like, so go into this book knowing that it's a little bit intense and that the character is super, super unlikable. And then I think you'll be fine. But I definitely was intrigued by her writing style, and I think I still would like to pick up 3 women. Final stitch count. And with this slip stitch that we are doing at the end of this little circle here, that is the end of my Crafty reads. I hope you did enjoy that. I enjoyed sitting and chatting with you. I ended up making 4 little circles. So thank you for keeping me company while I made my crochet. If you've read any of these books and have something to contribute, like, feel free to comment down below. I'd love to have a chat. And as always, there's my Kofi account down below if you wish to support me at any point. It's just a little one-time tip, just if you feel like it. But other than that, like, comment, subscribe, all of that fun stuff, and I'll check you next time.